Hello again, it's China Manufacturing Decoded, the podcast from Sofeast. Adrian back here again and joined by our CEO, Renaud. Renaud, hello again.
Hello, yes, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. I had a bit of a break in the US, as you know, and nice to get away from the UK for a while with everything that went on as well with the funeral and all of this sort of stuff. It's just been really crazy here. It's like been a different world. But back and enjoying it, and good to get Liz on last week. Interesting guest.
Yes, it was great. Yeah, very full of tips, full of good, useful comments. Yeah. I like this a lot. Yeah.
Great, yeah, I enjoyed it. We do try to get interesting guests on as often as we can here on the podcast. So that's it. Today's topic, we're talking about communication with Chinese suppliers, and you're going to talk through, again, tips and probably some of the best practices that you've picked up over the decades in China and dealing with a lot of suppliers for ourselves or for clients. So there's always going to be communication difficulties with any foreign suppliers, and China's no different. I think you're going to talk about some ways to message and to keep in touch, the difference between messaging and email, project management software, some templates, and something that we've discussed in other episodes, legally enforceable agreements, which of course include information that needs to be communicated. So yeah, shall we kick it off with communication difficulties?
Yes. Well, of course, it depends. And some suppliers, or should I say some people, some maybe salespeople or project managers working in some Chinese factories or sometimes in Chinese trading companies, maybe more often, are very good at communicating, make it very smooth and so on. Are very good also at making, foreign customers feel at ease, like, oh yeah, they've been to our country many times, they know they work with such and such company, they must be great, Sometimes it's a little bit of a show, but yeah, they can be great at communicating. They have great English, they understand all the jargon and things like that. Okay, that's some of the suppliers. And then at the other extreme, you have factories where nobody's speaking English and they are not used to foreign customers and export business at all or anything like that, right? So you need to be mindful of that when you select a supplier. You need to make sure. And maybe there's one really great person, and then but she's the only one. You ask for the export sales manager, you ask for some contact of some other sales people who can speak English, and like there's nobody else. That's a bit of a red flag right here, because if that person leaves, ouch, what's going to happen? So it's very person specific. Okay, so you need to be careful about that. Language is an issue. There's other issues actually that make communication a bit more difficult. There's timing expectations. So, someone doing business in New York City will expect a response, within the same workday, right? Now, there's a 12-hour difference, so they better get up early in the morning. But yeah, a lot of people in the US don't mind working, special hours with Chinese suppliers. So maybe they're online at 9 p.m. or something. But they will expect a response, pretty fast. If you send emails, well, Chinese suppliers have another expectation, right? If it's very important for them, they would answer. If they don't really know how to answer or whatever, you give them 5 questions and you expect them to answer every one of the 5 questions by return email, it might take them a week. So timing is a big disconnect. And that's what pushes people to go into WeChat, and I will cover that in a second. But right there, that's a bit of a challenge in itself and a big risk, actually. So the communication medium, maybe you like email, they like WeChat, or you like Skype calls, they like WeChat calls or something. Okay, that's easier. But these are the main sources of difficulty Obviously, there's some other issues. They you want them to commit onto something in writing, and they're like, based on the context at that time, we will see, we will do our best. There's all kinds of things like that. Obviously, people maybe like to talk in about like big concepts, but Chinese people tend to be much closer to the ground. There's all kinds of little issues with that. Also, and that's particularly true with American people. They like to use all kinds of sport analogy, oh yeah, give me a ballpark, and you knock it out of the park or whatever. All kinds of special expressions that Chinese people don't really learn about at university. Right? So sometimes they don't really understand. Okay. So that's very basic, just communication difficulties. But what we want to cover in this episode is really the communication medium. That's really what we want to focus on, because it is actually so important. It looks so innocuous, just go into whatever is most convenient. Maybe, but maybe not. Right, that's the message. And let's cover them one by one. Right, starting with the obvious one, WeChat. WeChat in Chinese. Right, it's been launched by Tencent, which is a huge IT company in Shenzhen. It's like a super app. You can do everything in WeChat. You can scan a QR code and pay for the metro ride or the bus ride. You can buy your train ticket. You can do all kinds of things in WeChat, more and more. It's crazy. There's no equivalent, I think, in Europe or in the US. No. There's no one app that's like, taking care of so many facets of your life. So
that's right.
Chinese people sort of live inside WeChat, right? It's a personal thing. They have their parents, they have their family and so on. They have their buddies, they have maybe their mistress, and then they have the business, the business relations, the customers and suppliers and everything. And whenever they're in WeChat, they're bombarded with all kinds of messages and things happening. So already you can see it's not the best way to have a sustained conversation, with 100% of their attention. But That's not really the issue. Yeah, number one is it's mostly a personal medium, right? First and foremost, it's personal. So if that person is no longer working for the company, but they keep communicating with you, will you even know, right? Whereas if it's by email on the company's website, on the company's domain, well, and you've checked that it's the same as their website and everything, you can guess that somebody can cut them out, right? But if they pull you into WeChat, you come into their personal realm, right? They might set up their own trading company and divert the orders from your company to their new trading company. Or they might go and work for another company, and all of a sudden they send you a new pro forma invoice with a new name, and you're like, oh, what is that? Oh yeah, don't worry, just changing the company, but it's the same, blah blah blah, same people, same factory, don't worry. Might be true, might not be true. Okay, that's the first potential issue. But what I see as the huge problem with WeChat is that people discuss stuff, people confirm stuff in WeChat, people send photos of problems they don't want to see, people send examples of what they want, etc., etc. And then good luck making sense of it, in the long run. So in our company, we have a rule. If you really have to use WeChat, maybe to push a supplier or something, you push them, but then you tell them, let's confirm this over email. If they confirm something in WeChat, you take a screenshot of it, you send it to them by email, you ask them to reconfirm. Right? Then you have a trace of that in the long run. Otherwise, things in WeChat just come and go. Might be impossible to search for it later. It might be completely, erased already. You can't trust that. Okay. And also it is so random and unstructured. It's terrible. Okay. So there's like one level up, which is email, and another level up, which is project management software. But really, the best way is to actually use proper working templates, and I will come to that. Okay. But that's WeChat. And I'm sure you also use WeChat every day, right?
It's essential for keeping in touch with friends and family in China, mainly because at work we use DingTalk, which you'll come on to a bit later on. And that's kind of more what I use professionally. But I use WeChat for speaking with my parents-in-law quite often. But yeah, definitely I use it a lot for a Western person. I suppose at this point, it might be worth just mentioning as well. It almost goes without saying, doesn't it, that mediums like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, those are a no-no.
Well, I'd say it's the same as WeChat, except that your contact in China even has to log on, with a VPN first to have access to this. So
that's right.
If at one point China changes their rules, changes their firewall and things like that, well, they would not even have access to it anymore, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, in a way, it's even worse than WeChat. Yeah, and also WeChat is like the least secure app out there. I mean, there's been a number of studies on that. Basically, it's totally, absolutely open to the local government there. But yeah, security is
the authorities love it.
Yeah, exactly. They have there's not even a back door; it's completely open. So security has not really been built in, and be careful what you put in WeChat, because a lot of people might have access to it, right? So that's WeChat, and we banned it at work, except when we really have to use it to push a supplier or something. If they're more responsive with it, okay, fine. But it's only for quick messages, discussions, never for confirmations. If the other party confirms something, put it in the proper working template if possible. Otherwise, just send it by email, but don't just keep it in WeChat.
Yeah.
I keep talking about email. So as I mentioned, confirmations, don't keep them in WeChat, put them in email, send them to the right people in email, and archive your emails. Okay. Email can, over time, becomes pretty messy too. And you might have an issue with your mailbox. Even if you use Microsoft 365 and everything, it might be, especially if you use a Mac, I noticed, it might be messy. It might be impossible to search and find certain old messages. So be mindful of that also, right? But the good thing about email, at least you can force some structure, right? So one very basic thing is, with a Chinese person, if you ask them 3 questions in sort of an unstructured way, blah, 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 like the worst is all in one paragraph, one long paragraph, like they would not even read it to the end, very often. Or, several messages, several questions, you ask them to come back to you on several topics. Most of the time they will miss 1 or 2 topics, right? And they won't even feel bad about it. It's like, okay, I responded to you on the easy stuff, and maybe I need a bit more time on the rest. And like, you're not asking me to follow a certain structure. So you are freestyle, I'm freestyle, right? Totally fair, totally expected. So if you send an email and you want to give 3 points for the supplier to follow up on, 3 to-dos, 3 tasks, or you ask, you request 3 pieces of information that are separate. Structure your email like that. Number 1, da-da-da-da. Number 2, da-da-da. Number 3, da-da-da. Please respond point by point. And when they respond, then you copy maybe they forget to respond to number 2. You copy number 2 and you resend it to them. Please keep it somewhat organized, blah, 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 1, 2, 3. And usually they get it and, they would do it. It doesn't come naturally maybe to them. And this is all the more important if there's a lot of jet lag. If you are in, I don't know, the worst maybe is mountain time in the US, or like you're in Salt Lake City, or you're in Las Vegas or someplace like that. The time zones are just horrible, if you work with Chinese suppliers. So you send an email and then basically you wait until the next day to get the response, and then you respond, and then you get, you wait another day. Very, very important to structure your emails so that at least you just wait one day, not just, you need to push them again, and it's another day, and another day. And then they tell you, I haven't understood what you meant. And then it's another day, right? So this is, this is email. Now, what is one step above email is project management software. Now, email, Chinese suppliers don't love email. They prefer WeChat. Now, project management software, usually they try to avoid it, right? And sometimes for good reason. If you use some of them that are hosted in the US and that they use some script libraries or something that maybe don't load nicely, or don't load nicely on Chinese browsers or something, or are very slow in China, it is painful for them. So be careful with that. Now, things like, Trello, Basecamp, Asana, and so on, usually tend to be okay, as long as they don't have to upload heavy files, or even sometimes download heavy files, because, with the server in the US, usually, it can be pretty painful for them, pretty slow, especially the uploads. All right. So be careful about that. But the good side about it is you create your to-dos and you assign them, and you give a target date and things like that. But it's not sufficient. You have to keep it alive. And so what some importers do is maybe they set up a scheduled weekly catch-up. They block 45 minutes with each key supplier every Monday morning, every whatever, right? They have their salesperson on Zoom or Teams, or again, whatever works for them, because some of them maybe will have issues, perhaps with Zoom, so maybe you have to be a bit flexible. And then you go through it, and they give you feedback right there, and then you can save their spoken comments right there in front of them. You sort of get them used to seeing it. And then they see the list of actions, with responsible party and due date and things like that. They commit to it, and then they know that next week it will be shown to them again. So now they, after a few times, they start to take it seriously. Okay. That's how you kind of have the rubber meet the road, right? It's kind of, you start to have traction with your system when you start to see, okay, it's serious. He will show that to me every time. I'd better get on with his system, right? Because anyway, that's the way he works. And that's where you want it to go. Okay, so project management system can be good, but you need to give it some time, and you need to keep it relatively simple. But it is great to have to plan for the tasks and to break them down and to arrange them, logically per topic and so on. At least for yourself, then you know what to push them on, right? So that's always a good thing. There is an interesting app in China, and you mentioned it. It's called DingTalk, D-I-N-G, Talk, T-A-L-K, which is a Chinese app. It's been developed by Alibaba, the Alibaba group. And in Chinese, they call it Ding Ding, not DingTalk. So it is a paying app. Think of a professional version of WeChat. And for Chinese people, it's, the interface is It's very easy to understand. It's very easy for them to get into it. So that's the good thing. It's very easy to get Chinese people to adopt it. But then it's not just WeChat. That's the beauty of it. You can give to-dos, to-do actions to people and give them a due date and everything, and it will remind them, on their mobile phone, which Chinese people is, center of of their attention usually. So if you want to keep it very simple for some suppliers, you might go with DingTalk. Again, as I mentioned, is paying, but it's not that expensive, and it really keeps the idea, that it's a chat app, and it's not that different from WeChat on a day-to-day basis, right? So that's if you really want easy adoption, right? And we use it because most of the company, is Chinese people, we've had some pretty good, pretty fast adoption. Now, some foreigners have some, resistance to that because maybe they don't want a Chinese app on their phone. Who knows, right? But it's the same as WeChat again, right? Actually, it's more secure. It's much more secure than WeChat, in my understanding anyway. So, yeah, it's basically Chinese people are used to a certain universe of websites and apps and everything that is sort of diverging away from what non-Chinese people are used to, and somebody's got to make a bit of a jump. So is it you that are going to do a jump? Then you better go with something like DingTalk, or is it them that are going to make a jump? Then it's going to be something like Asana or Trello or Basecamp. Okay, but again, in any case, you still need to have the regularly scheduled weekly catch-ups to review what's going on and ensure that they know what is most important, what is on their plate, and to sort of commit to the next actions, right? That's really, really important. You have to make it, you have to make sure the system lives, right? Otherwise, somebody writes something, nobody cares, and things really linger, and something is, they don't really know how to start to do something, and then they procrastinate, they never do it. That's a big problem that you really want to avoid, okay? Now, what is one step above sending emails and keeping things organized in project management and everything? Actually, I should not say that, but it's a very good complement to project management software. But it's really one step above email, is to have proper working templates. So when you tell your supplier what you expect, for example, quality standard on the finish of the product, well, put the color, material, and finish information on the 2D drawings of the parts. Put together a master file that includes all of the information you send to them about what you require and also about what you don't want. And during the development of a new product or during production, you get some files, some examples, of what you don't like because you see defective goods, bad samples, whatever. Take photos of it, and very, very clearly in that master document the fact that you don't like that and it should be like that, not like that, right? If you send that through emails or even worse, WeChat over time, do you think your supplier will remember everything? Do you think they will collect it in one document, translate it for the production people, etc., etc.? They will not. You have to assume they will not, right? If, I don't know, let's say it's an electrical product and it's like, it's supposed to do certain actions. And so, well, start to write the user manual and then they will know how it's supposed to work for the user, right? Rather than explaining it and writing a few things in an email and maybe shooting a video of another product and whatever. All of that sort of get lost. But if you put it in a Word document, send it to them, you archive it properly in your drive. Next time you have some ideas, you want to add details to it, or you see a potential issue you want to avoid, you keep improving that document, right? And you keep sharing it with them, and you keep requesting them to provide feedback and written confirmations that everything is okay, right? So, and I don't know, you have someone do an inspection. Well, the worst way to do an inspection, go there, see some issues, take some photos in WeChat, send it to people, and then that's it. It's in a channel, lost together, in the shuffle with so many other discussions, and that's it. It's 3 months later, you want to find it, maybe you cannot even find it, and it's completely unstructured and so on. That's the worst way to do it. But the best way to do it is to do actually a proper report all in one document, and then to get that information and some of these photos and use them to improve your document, your master document that I mentioned, that guides the supplier on what your quality standard is, right? And there's a lot of documents like that are central, that force people to have some structure, right? They want to do an engineering change on the product. Well, where is their form, the engineering change notification or request form? And do they ask in a formal way for your approval? Or do they just send you a WeChat message saying, TPU is not really going to work, let's do it in silicon? And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. And then 6 months later, you have some issues with the product, and you don't even remember you told them okay, right? And this is so common. Common. Maybe they still do it in TPU, and you say, but you say it was aluminum, and then they're like, oh no, or silicon, and then they tell you, oh, but we were asking you if that would be okay, but we didn't say we would do it that way. Oh, really? Okay, but the samples we sent for certification are in that material, but now you're doing in that other material. Oh, we never thought it would be a problem. So, try to work with milestones and deliverables. Otherwise, that's the kind of things that can happen, and things get really messy. And if the supplier is messy and the buyer is messy, you're going to have all kinds of issues. And sometimes it's better actually if they work with a trading company that gives, that puts some order into all this, right? Or work with a service provider that puts some order into it. Otherwise, you see people just sending, invectives and, insulting each other. And, the buyers just think that the Chinese supplier is completely dishonest. But you talk with the Chinese party and they also think the buyer is completely dishonest, right? Because they say something and then they say something else and blah, blah, blah. And they assume that you should do that, but you never really told them in a clear way. That's just the road, the highway to a disastrous relationship, and to basically, having to terminate the relationship and go to another supplier when actually it could have worked. So,
And one word springs to mind here, and that word also is control. And this is something we've spoken about a lot, and what you're kind of saying is, as the customer, you need to take responsibility for controlling the project, because if you don't, you're not guaranteeing that the foreign, in this case Chinese side's going to, and it's going to be a mess, or it may well likely be a mess. Messaging somebody on WeChat, it may seem like it's good enough, but as you've mentioned, what happens 6 months down the line when everybody's forgotten and nobody can find the right message and whatever? Then what do you do? Well, the whole thing's spinning out of control. So, this is really, really helpful so far, for sure.
Yeah, right. And then the last thing, we can't discuss this, especially working documents, without mentioning agreements, formal agreements, legally enforceable agreements, right? Because this is part of the work of clarifying how are we going to work together. Okay. There's a lot of cases where the buyer, again, doesn't work in a very structured manner, and talks about certain things, at the very beginning, but forgets to get them confirmed in writing. And then they spend 3 months or 6 months to get things right, and then they say, oh, by the way, all of these works that you've done on developing the product, hey, I need you to send me the full BOM, the bill of material. And suppliers like, oh, but we did that sourcing work for free. We did not charge you for it, so we're not going to send you the output of that free work. It's our property. And the buyer is like, what are you talking about? Without the bill of material, I don't know what the product is made of. I don't know where the key components come from. Then basically it's your product, it's not my product. And so you have different perspectives here. And the supplier is thinking, yeah, of course, but you didn't pay us for that. So what do you think? We'll give it to you for free, and then you go to another supplier to enjoy all the free work that we've done, So, and again, the customer is thinking, damn, these guys are really messing with me. It's my product. And if they told me to pay, I would have paid. It's fine, right? So anyway, that's just an example. And then the buyer works with a lawyer at that point and says, we need the full bill of material, including the list of every part, and including for every part the full contact information of the supplier, the price per piece, the MOQ, the lead time, When the supplier basically doesn't want to sign it, then where do you go from there, right?
Well, it's too late by then.
Yeah, it's way too late. So you got to be ready up front with the right agreements, and don't spend months and months of work with one supplier if you don't have all these bases covered, right? And I picked the bill of material. It could be the ownership of the tooling. It could be all kinds of things. What happens if there's 5% defective goods in a batch? What happens if this and this and that, right? If you don't get that confirmed in writing early on, the longer you wait, the harder it will be. And then if you wait until you have some kind of disaster with a supplier to actually look into it, well, what do you do, right? You're not going to get the kind of nice situation, everybody's happy and so on, based on that. You're not going to be happy. It's not going to go well for you, basically, right? Because you don't have much leverage. So, yeah, all of that to say, you need to have some working templates. If you don't, then you have to work with people who have the right working templates. Make sure that everything gets, documented as needed. And lawyers are part of that. Lawyers are one of the service providers that will draft the right templates that you need, right? And an engineering firm that will make sure that the 2D drawings with the proper information, the critical to quality dimensions, and the tolerances and everything are properly documented, is part of that. And a supply chain management company that will ensure that the BOM is nice and complete, at least as complete as it should be at that stage in the project, all on a good template and so on and so forth, is part of that. And these are just a few examples, right? A risk analysis on the design or on the manufacturing process, a proper documentation of all the testing plan, a proper report after testing, for performance, for reliability, for whatever. All of these are important deliverables that should be on some kind of template, and these work templates, if you've never worked on that, then you need to work with people who have already done it, and they would do it for you, right? It's not the kind of things that we would send out for free to somebody, right? I mean, some listeners might think, oh yeah, okay, I make a list, I will ask this guy. If we do it for you, we'll do it on the template. You'll see what the template's like, but this is like asking a lawyer to send you their template for a manufacturing agreement, for free as a favor. Not going to happen, right? Because that's the way they get paid, is for their work and their time and all of the accumulated knowledge and experience that they had over the years. So people, be reasonable, because a lot of people are not very reasonable in their requests. Right? We're very happy to share advice and tips and strategies and things like that. But we can't completely open the kimono to everybody, because it's part of our experience and part of the value that we bring.
I think the listeners know this is an educational podcast,
right,
and we do give away a lot of information for free. But at the end of the day, Sofeast is a business, and this is absolutely some of the stuff that we can do for you. Actually, one of the new solutions that we offer, and it's on the website now, is checking the new product introduction deliverables. So if you've been going through the MPI process with let's say you've got a manufacturer in China or elsewhere, and before you start to get ready to go into production, lots of stuff needs to have happened, and you've just given a list of a lot of important things. I mean, there's a heck of a lot more as well, right? So how do you know that you're ready to say, okay, fine, let's proceed and let's finish off the final stages of development and then go into production? Because if something gets missed, disaster. And this is something we can literally go through all of that information and double check, triple check to make sure that nothing is going to be missed and that you're safe to go into production. So that's a cool new solution that's worth mentioning.
Yes. Yeah. So trade runs on paper, right? That's what people used to say. Well, good manufacturing also runs on paper. There's a lot of documents that are very, more or less standardized, quite standardized in some cases. And ignoring them comes with a lot of risks.
Oh boy, that is very, very true. Okay, well, good advice today. I think definitely lifting the lid on some of the better mediums to be using, and some tips on how best to communicate with a Chinese supplier. If you're listening and wondering, well, hang on a minute, DingTalk, I just don't get it. What are these guys on about? But feel free to get in touch, and we'll definitely try to, give you some advice. That's not a problem. And the website by now, sofeast.com. And we'll be back again next week. Yeah.
Thanks, Adrian, and thanks everybody.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast, brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much, much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share, because it will really help others discover us too.